Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? Back on May 29th, we had a banning that actually was kind of a long time coming, but now we're almost 3 weeks past that, and the question has to come up, and we have to ask, did they really matter? Did it change standard at all? Are we better off because of it? So that's what we're going to dive into and take a look at today. And I thought there were a lot of ways we could tackle this to decide if it did help or not. And first thing was, I wanted to talk about, like, we all thought maybe this was going to lead to there being a huge rush of aggro decks, but that didn't quite happen so much, which is good. We still have a variety of decks to play against, but there's also the other issue that another set dropped in Aftermath around that same time, and that sort of shifted things as well. So I don't know if we can even say this is totally because of the bans, but I will say that whatever the results are, the bans definitely are going to be part of having an impact on those results. But to start with, I want to look at 3 different events here, and these are best of 3 events. But these were the events I could find that at least had Decklist available that we could look at the data. There have been several standard events, which is good because more standard events are firing now, so that's already a positive. But not all of them are actually using anything online where we could see all the decklists. So in this case, we're using MTG Melee to look at the results, and I think this should at least give us somewhat of a clear picture. Now, if you look at what we have here, you can see that we have the top played deck really was Azorius Soldiers, then Esper Legends, and Mono Red Aggro. Only 3 of each. This event only had, I believe, 32 participants with 31 participants with 22 archetypes between them. Before, where we would have had 32 players, there's a good chance you would have still had like 5 to 7, maybe even more of those decks being some Rakdos variant. Not so much this time, and this is actually a positive. So these aren't bad numbers, right? This is kind of spread over a lot of decks. But for us to even get to the Rakdos deck, they went 0-2. So it does make a difference and kind of took those out of play. But let's look at another event. Now, this one's a bit larger. This is from the Pizza Box Open. They run a couple of these, I think like every 2 or 3 weeks. But this one had 102 players participate in this event. So this is going to be more indicative of what the format could be or should be. So looking at this one, again, we have a pretty good spread of decks, though this time the top percentage deck in the field was Esper Legends, though that is only coming up at about 10% of the actual field, which is pretty good out of 100 plus decks. So if nothing's making up more than 10%, that's a positive. But even with that being the most played deck, the match win percentage was only 37.5%. So it's not like it was the most played and the most dominant. So again, positive things here. And again, we have to go pretty far down. I don't even see Rakdos in the top 10 most played. Actually, here we go. There's a Rakdos mid-range. 2 people brought it, 50% win percentage. Not bad. Still respectable, worth playing. But yeah, we'll take a look at the other event, which is also another Pizza Box Open. This one had what looks to be 113 participants. That's actually another good size event. Scroll down here to the archetype breakdown. Looks very similar to the last one in the sense that you have Esper Legends being the biggest part of the field. This time only 9%. But yeah, lots of interesting results here. Nothing making up more than 9% of the field, which is great. People are playing a variety of decks, even kind of acknowledging the decks that they think are good or better. But even then, between the top, 10 most played decks, you've still got a lot of different players that came with those. So far, looking good. Now, that was all best of 3, but I want to take a look at some best of 1 results. And for that, I hopped over to MTG Melee, where they track a lot of this. And I not just wanted to look at the win percentages, because I think that's all variable and can change over time, but I wanted to see what had the most played matches, because I think that also tells a story in best of 1 of how many people are gravitating toward a certain deck for those best of 1 games and kind of what you can expect to see. And lo and behold, at the top of their list is actually Selesnya Enchantments, with 11,000 matches tracked, which is pretty powerful. And for this, by the way, I put in from the time of the banning until now, and everything at just the platinum level. I couldn't look at above that because I don't have a paid account with them, but I think this is still a good enough story for everybody to kind of get an idea of what to expect. But you have Mono White Humans with 10,000, Mono Red with 6,800, Mono Red Burn with 6,100, Azorius Soldiers with 3,400. So yeah, just a good spread here. Mono Black, 2,700. I mean, Rakdos, the first Rakdos you run into is a mid-range deck that plays a little bit bigger. different than what you had before, and it still has 1,700 matches played. So people are playing variety of stuff, and I think this also shows the impact a little bit of what we got in Aftermath, right? Because the Mono White Humans, the Azori Soldiers, Sledge Enchantments, each got some little parts from there that are actually pretty useful. So I think it's a combination of the bannings here, alongside also having good cards in Aftermath that filled out a few of these different deck types that has actually led to some of the variety. Does this mean you're not going to run into mono red in the best of one queues? Of course not. The same way you're going to run into a lot of Selesnya enchantments and whatever, and that's fine. But oddly, it can be anecdotal because I haven't run into that many soldiers decks, but apparently somebody's playing them out there somewhere. So yeah, I think overall the bannings were a positive. And I have to admit, I wanted even more stuff on there. And honestly, I think I have about 5 or 6 more cards on my hit list that if we were to put on there, I wouldn't be too upset. But truthfully, overall, it's been a positive. Like, if you were really burned out by playing against all the Rakdos or even mid-range decks that were using the banned cards, you know, namely Invoke Despair and Fable, this kind of clears the way for you to try other things now. And you can go to any of the site, look at any of the results, much bigger spread of decks, more positive things going on. Now, there are still problems. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm happy that, like, I don't know, Atraxa's still around, right? Like, like that card's annoying as hell. But still, I think overall the format at least has some reasonable answers and some things you can do. And, you know, variety's there. That's kind of all you can really ask for. Now, the downside is this is still early, and we're going to have to get all the way through the summer, which is still 2.5 months at this point, that we have to survive until we get the, well, almost 3 months really, until we get the next set, which is Wilds of Eldraine. They did say they're willing to ban other cards if there's still a problem, so we have at least that to look forward to. But this is kind of the downside of not having a standard legal set in the summer. We have to go a very long time with a, I don't know if I'd call it stale, but potentially solved metagame. We'll have to see how many events happen over the summer for people and what kind of pushes those numbers around. Because obviously, if you have a couple of events with stakes involved, then people will put in more time to trying to solve the problem. But we'll see. For now, I'm going to at least give the banning a tentative, like, B+, A-. I think it mostly did what it needed to. I think if we'd have done a couple more things, would have been perfect. But at least for now, we're not stuck with that ugly world we were in a second ago. And if standard isn't your thing and you're thinking about playing more limited, check out this other video I put up and get some quick tips in about 6 minutes.